Morning.
Morning.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see everyone.
Christine, did you get my declaration this morning?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. We are good to go.
Well, thank you very much, Corporate Communications Officer Ferguson. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our West Grey public meeting, the date August 8th, 2022. On item number 1, I'm calling this meeting to order. We have all members of council present. There is a quorum for this meeting. So at this time, I will ask Corporate Communications Coordinator Sheila Ferguson to provide information with regard to the features of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Before I begin, if you get disconnected, you can dial in at 1-647-558-0588 and enter the meeting ID for this meeting, which is 849-6974-7298. It should be noted for members of the public that this meeting is being hosted on Zoom meeting software, but it is also being live streamed on YouTube. Public participation and comments are not monitored on YouTube and must be done through the Zoom meeting software. Both members of staff and council have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software. Members of council and staff will be raising their hands physically on camera to speak. For members of the public, if you require any technical assistance throughout the duration of the meeting, please send a chat message to myself, Sheila Ferguson, Communications Coordinator, and I will attempt to assist you.
Well, thank you very much. We are now moving on to item number 2, purpose of meeting. I'll refer to our administrative assistant, Lisa Mulligan. Could you please explain the purpose of this morning's meeting?
The purpose of the meeting is to review applications for proposed amendments to West Grey zoning bylaw number 37-2006, and to allow interested members of the public the opportunity to ask questions or offer comments with regard to the applications. Council will not make a decision on the applications at this meeting. Based on the recommendations and information received at this public meeting, amendment bylaws will be presented for approval at a regular council meeting. A public registry is available by email at sferguson@westgrey.com. And if any members of the public would like to be notified in writing of the decision on an application, they are to provide their name and mailing address for the registry. This will also allow for notice of an Ontario Land Tribunal if the decision of the application is appealed.
Thank you very much. Item number 3, declaration of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Members of council, is there anything to declare at this time? Councillor Hutchinson, and if you could use your mute button to unmute. Thank you.
Right. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the right button here. I've been playing with buttons.
Indeed.
Yes, in this agenda, I'm declaring conflict of interest on item ZA 14.2022 or 2022. Survey edges Anderson as my property backs onto the applicant's property to the south. So that's not this item, but the next item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. When we get to what is referred to as item 5 on this agenda, I will just remind everybody at that time. Appreciate that. Members of council, is there anyone else that needs to identify a conflict of interest or general nature thereof at this time? Seeing none, we will now move on to item number 4, ZA 13.2022-155 Boyd Lake Road. 4.1, application for zoning amendment, Daffin Jeremy and Daffin Lauren. 4.2, Planner L. Spencer report, ZA 13.2022. So we have a recommendation, and at this point, I will advise of our format. The recommendation will be read. I will look for a mover and a seconder. We'll have a presentation from our planner Spencer, questions from members of council, then there will be a vote, and then we will move on to the balance of the agenda with regard to this application, which will pick up at 4.3, 4.4, and then 4.5. Okay, so at this point, I will read the recommendation for this application. The council received Planner Spencer's report and considers an amending bylaw for a future meeting. Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Townsend. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Shea. All right. Now, at this time, we will have our presentation from Planner Spencer. Good morning, and we're interested in your presentation.
Good morning, and thank you through you, Madam Mayor. The applicant has requested the construction of a second dwelling unit on the subject lands. The property is municipally identified as 155 Boyd Lake Road and legally identified as Part Lot 53, Plan 1097, in the geographic township of Normanby, the municipality of West Grey in the county of Grey. The purpose of this application would be to change the zone symbol on the subject lands from ER Estate Residential and NE2 Natural Environment 2 to ER Estate Residential with exception 463. Exception 463 is proposed to permit the construction of a second detached dwelling unit on the subject lands. Comments were provided from the County of Grey. In addition to clarification from the County of Grey, comments from the SVCA. In addition, several comments have been provided over the course of the weekend, in addition to other items that were provided post the publishing of the agenda. Those comments range, so I'll summarize them. There are quite a few. Essentially, there's concern for the permission of a second dwelling unit and the use of private services, and concern related to the fact that this is not a defined settlement area, in consideration for the privacy of adjacent landowners, further consideration of the restrictive covenants that are on title as a result of the subdivision application previously approved in the past. In addition, there are concerns that there are some environmental issues and questions whether or not an environmental study should be completed to permit a second dwelling unit on the property. A copy of all of those comments that have been received will be circulated to council, but there's quite a few of them that came in over the weekend, as I said, so that will be provided to council prior to the consideration of the bylaw at a future council meeting. I'm happy to provide any further clarification as required. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. Members of council, are there any questions with regard to the presentation that you just heard from Planner Spencer? I'm scanning the screen. Councillor, over to you, Councillor Hutchinson.
Yes, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I just have some concerns, and Planner Spencer did mention them through some of the correspondence that we received. My biggest concern is by allowing a second dwelling, are we violating the restricted covenants that are in this agreement? So I'm curious about that, because obviously we don't really need a legal battle. So in the covenant, in the agreement, it talks about no home less than 1,400 square feet, and this one would be less than that. And it also mentions about each lot having a single family home. So this would make this one with 2 homes. And I know where the provincial and where we're going in terms of granny flats and second dwellings and so on. I just think in this case, because these are estate homes, it's a little bit unique in terms of the conditions that were brought forward in the understanding of this being a sort of unique dwellings. My other suggestion is this home that the original home of the owner has a house there of 4,000 plus square feet. So I'm curious why a granny flat in the basement wouldn't work for this situation. So that would be another possibility. Anyways, those are some of my concerns, and that's relayed through some of the neighbors' concerns in terms of are we setting a precedent so that other people may create second homes on these lots, which would maybe change the whole setting of the area. So I won't be supporting the bylaw, but that's to come forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you for those comments. Over to you, Planner Spencer, for a response.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So the application on a site-specific basis for second dwelling units is something that has been supported by council in the past. With respect to the restrictive covenants, I would suggest that further information and clarification should be provided from the municipal solicitor to provide some ease for the consideration of council prior to the passage or consideration of the bylaw at that point in time. They are registered on title, and it was from the original agreement related to the 52 single-family homes. The zoning is a separate matter, but I do believe clarification can be provided to give some assurance to council for consideration related to the restrictive covenants.
Thank you for that. There was nothing further, Councillor Hutchinson. All right, over to you. Oh, before I go to you, Councillor Townsend, I do note that there is another individual with your hand up. I will call upon other individuals under 4.4 in the meeting. So please stay tuned. Over to you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Townsend, can you hear me? I'm wondering, do we have audio for the rest of the meeting? Can the other members of council hear me? Okay, very good. So that's a good check. Councillor Townsend, I'm wondering, can you hear me at this time? You have your hand up, so I'm wondering, is it at this time you wish to speak?
Yes, it is. Thank you. My internet's a bit unstable, so I apologize if
Fair enough.
I am getting that message. Yes, I was curious when we get into a situation like this where we have the PPS and other legislation that tells us what we can and cannot do from a planning perspective. I'm wondering whether the solicitor would also be able to comment on the possible conflict or direction that we would take, because those do in fact clash. They appear to, at least in my case, with what's untitled and what's in the legislation. So would that also be addressed as part of the solicitation from the solicitor? Thank you.
Planner Spencer?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. That would be the intent of the advice to get from the solicitor to determine if there's any further concerns related to the restrictive covenants and the separate issue of zoning.
Anything further, Councillor? Okay, over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, and good morning, Council and members of the public and staff. Under 4.1, it's just a housekeeping thing that we've looked at, is the application for zoning under 4.1. It's got listed on the application lot 57, where it's actually lot 53, I believe. So we just did a little housekeep up there. And then when you go to the executive summary under Planner Spencer's report, it is saying the geographical township of Normanby, and I don't believe that Forest Creek is in Normanby, so I just wanted to identify those two. Again, it's just housekeeping. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Planner Spencer, anything to add to that?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. That is correct. That is a typo with respect to the former geographic township. My apologies.
Okay, Councillor Townsend, you still have your electronic hand up. I know your questions have been satisfied. Thank you for taking your electronic hand down. Other members of council, is there any questions of our planner at this time? Just scanning. All right, so there does not appear to be any other questions. So at this time, I will call the vote on the council receives Planner Spencer's report and considers an amending bylaw at a future meeting. All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 2, 3. 3. All those opposed? 2, 3. Sorry, I just lost screen for a moment. The motion is tied 3-3. I'm just wondering how I need to, that's only 6 and there's 7 of us. So I need to see the hands really clear. All those in favor of the motion indicate with a raised hand. 2, 3. All those opposed indicate with a raised hand. 2, 3, 4. The motion has lost 4-3. So at this time, I will have a question of our CAO Deputy Clerk in one moment, but Councillor Hergert, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I would like to present a motion that would defer this item until we have solicitor opinion and then be brought back.
All right. So we have a motion to defer and until legal report is brought back. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Towns. All right, any questions? All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 2, 6. All those are, and that includes myself, so that motion has been carried. We are now moving on to 4.3, written comments, 4.3.1, Grey County, 4.3.2, Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and as well, Planner Spencer, in addressing those, if there's anything additional. Could you also address if there have been any other pieces of correspondence to note at this meeting? Please go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. So the comments coming from the county and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority are both supportive of the application at hand. In addition, as previously noted, there are quite a few comments from the public with those concerns that I summarized previously related to the environmental components, whether or not a second dwelling unit should be permitted, questions related to restrictive covenants, and I will be circulating those to all of council so that they can have some consideration prior to the bylaw being brought forward.
And no additional correspondence at this time to address?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, not at this time.
Thank you. Over to you, CAO Deputy Clerk Johnston. Have you received any additional information at this time?
Through you, Mayor Robinson, I have received correspondence over the weekend, but the planner also was included in those in that information, so we will send that off together.
Thank you. 4.4, verbal comments. 4.4.1, council members. Council members at this time, are there any verbal comments? Seeing none, we will now move on to 4.4.2, public members. Administrative Assistant Lisa Mulligan, could you just explain the features and how somebody, how somebody can explain how somebody can be involved in this? So I'm just looking at the cues here. We will go to Corporate Communications Officer Ferguson to explain the features of how to participate at this section of the public agenda, and then I will call upon the individuals. Please go ahead, Corporate Communications Officer.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. It should be noted for this portion of the meeting that public participation must be done through the Zoom meeting software and cannot be done through the live stream on YouTube. For members of the public waiting to participate in this portion of the meeting, you may do so in one of two ways. The first being, if you have joined us via phone line, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and that will let us know that you would like to speak. After speaking, if you raise your hand in error, you can press *9 again to lower your hand. If you have joined us using the Zoom meeting software, you can either send a chat message to myself, Sheila Ferguson, Communications Coordinator, either stating that you would like to speak or that you would like your message read on your behalf for the record. Or you can raise your hand, usually located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen with a blue or yellow hand icon. And at this time, Mayor Robinson, I am seeing 2 members of the public wishing to speak.
Thank you for that explanation. And we'll start with Nancy Jensen. Please go ahead and good morning.
Good morning, I'm Nancy Jensen, partner of Jaco Developments and co-owner of Forest Creek Estates. In the first place, I'd like to bring to your attention that a big error has been made, that as property owners in Forest Creek Estate, we have never been notified of the amendment of this bylaw. It is just because of the goodwill of a resident that it was being brought to our attention at the very end of last week. So we have not been able to prepare a whole lot, or really, if this was missed, we would not have had an opinion to have our say in it. Besides that, I would kind of start with the vision of Forest Creek Estate. Jaco Developments wishes to create a community ownership estate with high quality single homes on large lots in ecological rich nature reserve. The people who bought properties in this development, Forest Creek Estates, have the same visions. They have left towns and cities to enjoy nature to the fullest, but now all of a sudden they have to live up to a nightmare that they have their dream home finished and are confronted with having a house built in front of the dining room window. The restricted covenants, as was mentioned before.
Excuse me, Nancy.
We'll say
excuse me, Nancy. I'm just wondering. We're having a little bit of audio trouble. Could I trouble you just to take your video off? Perhaps that would assist. Just on the audio part.
Okay. Is this better?
I hope so. Please go ahead.
Okay. I hope you can. Can you hear me better now?
So far, so good.
Okay. Thank you very much. So what I really want to tell everybody is that between the municipality of West Grey and Jaco Developments, there is a subdivision agreement. The subdivision agreement was made in 1986 for the Lemco Resort Development Corporation and was amended in 1993. In March of 2018, Jaco Development bought the Lemco Resort. And in January 22nd, 2019, the subdivision agreement was amended. Schedule E in the subdivision agreement is the restricted covenants. So since that has been signed by the council, you agree to exactly the same vision as Forest Creek has. And the vision is that there is a single family home on an estate, a large estate property. At the time of the zoning, and signing, the zoning was ER. Can you still hear me?
I was just going to say thank you. If you could just back up to your last sentence, there was a gap in the audio.
Yeah, so at the time of the signing of the agreement, the zoning was ER. So this is an agreement between West Grey and Jaco. Now there is a bylaw have this agreement that are. In the first place, you should run that by Jaco Developments to see if you can change that zoning, because we agreed to ER, not ER with exception. So if you want to change the zoning, you have to ask us first if we agree to the exception. In the first place, we've been left out of this whole entire process. In the second place, I think there is a breach of the agreement by not contacting Jaco before any decisions are made. And to clarify this, Jaco Development is totally against the idea of having a second home on a property. This is protecting our residents, that they keep having the vision of having their beautiful home on a large estate lot and not having to squish in other houses and other people. And if this would go ahead, we could end up with a lot more people in the subdivision, and we do not allow more people in the subdivision. And since West Grey agreed with the restricted covenants, it is just as much your law as it is ours. And before any changes are made, it should be discussed with Jaco Development before you go ahead. This is all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nancy Jensen. I very much appreciate your comments, and I know they are so noted through our planning staff. Don Tremble, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for hearing me. I'm under the same thing. First of all, on that zone change, I don't think the subdivision has been assumed yet. So Jayco Developments would have a big say in that because West Gray has not assumed it yet. And the other thing is I've had customers, I have 15 lots out there that I've built on. And I've had customers ask me about this in the past. And I was understanding, no, it's single with the option of doing a basement apartment. So if you let another house on there, you could potentially have 4 residents. You could have the original house with a basement and you could have the other one with another basement apartment. So you could literally have 4 residents on one property. So I just think that, and I feel real bad because the house I built beside it, I helped locate that house. We kept it to the one side so they could enjoy their lot in privacy, and they will not have any privacy now. So, and I'm hoping that I don't have any lawsuits or anything against me because, like in our agreements, we put in their single dwelling estates. So that's just my comment. I haven't had enough time either. I just got the phone call Thursday on it. So I didn't have a lot of time to do research, but I'm definitely against it. And I still have two lots out there I haven't sold yet. So I'd want to disclose something like that to my new homeowners that purchased, and it could affect my sales of my properties. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next individual I see on screen is Bridget Strock. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Council. Thanks for allowing the public to participate in this. So I am a resident in Forest Creek Estates, and I think, I echo very similarly to what, Don has said, what Nancy has said, and I believe your planner indicated that, various members of the community have communicated our unhappiness with a few items. So the first is the fact that a zoning request of this nature did not trigger a notification to the entire community was disappointing at best. And, on the issue of the actual rezoning, there is some serious concern over allowing second dwellings, right? Like we've talked about and you've heard others speak to, there is already bylaws in place that allow for the attached dwelling to have a granny suite or a secondary suite in the basement. So that does allow for anybody who wants to take care of dependents or aging parents, but to have a second building on the property, I think opens a Pandora's box to a variety of issues, whether you think about the possibility of Airbnb, additional septic systems on each of these lots to now service both units, increased traffic and potential for congestion. The fact of having some of those secondary suites, if they are used for Airbnb, it starts to call into question a transient community that develops and doesn't have an invested interest in the community and some of the social capital that's lost based on that. So I do think it, warrants much more consideration than what has been given, much more discussion with the community than what opportunity we were initially afforded. And I would implore, either more communication or for it to be turned down. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. And I just want to again say for all the comments that we are receiving during this time, staff are noting those as well. So we appreciate that. I'm now going to go to an individual that is listed on screen as P. Lawrence. Good morning. Please go ahead.
Good morning. Patrick Lawrence here. Thank you for the opportunity for the comment, being able to make comments. I did submit a written submission. A lot of it just mimics what the other are saying, which is surprising because I did do it independently. And my five main concerns were, of course, the septic and the water. The plan was originally approved for 50 odd lots, and realize it is just one lot that we're talking about today, but there are big properties here, and it could be multiplied, as some other people pointed out, for up to 4 per property, which I think would be a detriment to the beautiful nature that we have moved to. The second was the Escarpment Biosphere Conservancy, which is right next to the lot. Personally, I'm a few lots removed. I don't have concerns about immediate privacy, but one can expect that this could happen and roll out, across all 50 lots. But one of the selling features for us, my wife and I did take almost a year to find this. We moved from, the Golden Horseshoe, away from congestion, highly populated, and then after only moving in a month later to receive a letter like this, very limited information, had to do a lot of research on our own. Unfortunately, did not realize the agenda was posted already with the Saugeen conservation, all that. I only noticed that last night. I think as a small suggestion to say that the materials were posted. It was not in the letter. It did not say they would be posted. It did talk about how to get onto the meeting, but a lot of time was spent reinventing the wheel, noticing Saugeen had already commented in. And on those, I don't know if those were approvals of the application, but I guess they were more like non-rejection, that it was already disturbed and that this would disturb it a lot more. So I understand their point. The covenants was kind of my main personal point, that we had signed up for this, part of the title, a way of living, a vision, and then 1 month in to find out that that could all change overnight. And we are heavily invested, as you know. Any properties purchased during this year were very expensive. The taxes will be extreme. And then to find out that that could all fall apart within months. The other part was just no change. I believe a couple of other members had mentioned that the council did approve the plan. They're part of the plan. And then to find out 1 month into living here, that could all change. Again, without being notified. I happened to live within 120 meters, so it was notified, but the question was, well, did everybody receive it? Because I agree from a privacy or a direct impact point of view, 120 meters is reasonable, but it could definitely impact the entire community if little homes start going up, Airbnb. And we've stayed in a lot of Airbnbs over the past 2 years with COVID, not traveling far. People treat them differently. We definitely treated them like our own homes. But, when you see signs, please be careful, and put down the septic tank, you hear owners complaining of what's going down and, parties and traffic. And so that was my main concern, that this would turn into an Airbnb vacation property. And it's not what we had signed up for. And I guess the last was just protection of the area with Jayco donating the area around the lake to the Conservancy. I thought that was amazing, not trying to be profit hungry, but to save that for everybody. It is a public space. Anybody can come use it. It's not just for the residents, but to be able to share that. And it's just a beautiful space and people take care of it, are invested. I just don't see somebody with an Airbnb going and building a picnic table or cleaning up the fire or cleaning up the garbage. It's really a holiday for them and not a way of living. And it was just about the vision, the spirit of Jayco Developments, and just how that was all enshrined. And I've moved around a lot of my life, and to be able to find this place and picture this, until retirement, until we have to move out of here due to, well, age, I guess. But and that, I guess there are other families in transit. And when Don Tremble just mentioned he had been in part of his conditions, these are single family homes, and that was the understanding. And that has all changed overnight. So it would have been good to have, I think, more time to consider this. But in summary, just totally against this, more in the spirit. If we go back to what was trying to be created here, I realize maybe certain ways of reading bylaws or wording of bills and things like that, that it could still fit, and it technically could fit. But if you go back to what the whole purpose of this development was, it was to have 50 large homes, single homes in the middle of nature, and not 200 homes and just another, I might also move back to Burlington Oakville if that would happen here, and that definitely not want to do. We love living here already. So a bit long-winded as usual. So thank you for your time, and thank you for the opportunity again.
Patrick Lawrence, thank you very much for your comments. I understand through staff that Jeremy Dolphin would like to speak there. He wasn't able to raise his electronic hand. I'd like to offer the opportunity now to Jeremy Dolphin to speak. Please go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you. So first off, I'd like to apologize for being public enemy number one. But so we had full intention to do this properly, professionally. We came into this neighborhood under a very odd circumstance where we took over a new build from someone. we were not aware of the restricted covenants. We had thought we were taking the proper steps by going through West Gray. So, Nancy, I apologize for the nightmare that we've created, as to speak. So it's a.
Sorry, please go ahead. It would appear that I was the only one that had an internet connection notification of being unstable.
Okay.
Please continue. My apologies.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. So, I just wanted to say that we had no intentions to create this dilemma or and apologize to our neighbors that weren't made aware. We had thought the process we had taken was the proper steps. We had moved from Ottawa, where we had an acre and a half, where we had a small in-law suite detached from our house, and we were planning to do the same thing here. We didn't know we weren't allowed to do it, and we're learning quickly that it's highly frowned upon. So again, I apologize, and I really don't know what we do for next steps, but we will make sure that we address these concerns accordingly. And I will say that the lot had an approved building there already by the Jayco development in the exact spot we were going to put it, with the intention of it being a shop or garage. I'm not sure that is still intended, but that is already approved. And our plan will probably not to make it an in-law suite, but there is the potential that there may be a building there anyways. So I just want to highlight that. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Those are appreciated, as all the comments from the citizens are most appreciated. I'm looking on screen. I'm not seeing anyone else, but I do want to identify Corporate and Communications Officer Ferguson. If you also see individuals, whether it's through any other communication, please let me know so we could have everybody have the opportunity to speak. So I'll call upon you as well. Kay Eccles, please go ahead. Kevin Eccles.
Sorry, was on mute there. In investigating some of this, I am a resident of Forest Creek, and I'm certainly not in favor of it because I don't believe it's a compatible use with all the rest of the residents that are buildings that are here. Doing some investigation onto the provincial policy statement, it's interesting that it states very emphatically that a second dwelling on a single residential property be placed in the rear yard of the existing building or the existing house. And clearly from the description and the plan that's laid out, this proposal certainly doesn't meet that, and it certainly doesn't meet any of the requirements or requests from any of the residents that are here as well too. And I personally just don't believe that it's a compatible use at this point in time, that secondary residents be allowed on these lots. But and as I just said, following the provincial policy, it should be in the backyard. And I believe if it was in the backyard where the proposal would be, certainly would generate more comments from the Conservation Authority as well too. I think those things have to be taken into consideration. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for your comments. I'm not seeing anyone else on screen, but I am taking a second look. Over to you, Sheila Ferguson, who's our Corporate Communications Officer. Are you seeing anyone that wishes to speak to item number 4, ZA 13.2022, 155 Boyd Lake Road?
Through you, Mayor Robinson. At this time, I'm not seeing any other member of the public wishing to speak.
Okay, and I take another look. Well, thank you very much. We are now moving on to 4.5, next steps. So I will refer to our administrative assistant, Lisa Mulligan, to identify what the next steps are, unless that goes over to another staff person. So just double checking. Okay, so I'm, at this time, I've just been requested to go to our planner, Laura Lee Spencer, to provide the next steps. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. So the next steps will be, as previously noted, that I will obtain advice from the municipal solicitors to address the restrictive covenants. In addition, anyone wishing to provide comments at this point in time are welcome to do so through the planning department or the clerk's department, which time we will include and summarize those comments for council's consideration prior to the bylaw being brought forward for consideration at that time. I anticipate that this item will be deferred as a result of looking for that further clarification prior to council's consideration to provide the benefit of clarity for that purpose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are now moving on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is ZA 14.2022, Survey Edges PT Block C, Town of Durham. We already have noted that Councillor Hutchinson has declared a conflict of interest on this one. So before I go any further, Councillor Hergert, you have your hand up.
Thank you. It actually relates to the next steps, as previously noted at item number 4. I'm curious if staff would please comment about the notice requirement to the public and what the opportunity is in the future to possibly—
Can that be done, Laura? Or is that just part of the comments in the next phrase? All right. All right. So just conferred. I wonder, before we go on to item number 5, Planner Spencer, could you please just identify the notification process?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The Planning Act requires for applications to be circulated to all registered property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands. If it was the desire and direction of council, that can be amended, but that is what's required under the Act. In addition, all commenting agencies, authorities having jurisdiction are circulated at the same time for comment and requests for comments and concerns. Thank you.
Thanks. And that certainly was part of the comments that were raised by the citizens that was so noted by staff that will be addressed further. You have a further comment, Councillor Hergert?
I'm curious, and I would like to recommend that we expand the 120 meters to the entire subdivision. It is approximately 50 homes, and it does seem like a very tight knit community that is all under the same restrictive covenants. So I believe it does have greater interest than just the 120 meters, and I would like to direct staff that we would be able to expand that to all of the homes in Forest Creek Estates.
So first of all, you will know, Councillor, you cannot direct staff as an individual. So if you are at all considering, one moment, please. If you are at all considering, then please place a motion.
I would move that we direct staff to expand the notification area to all owners in Forest Creek Estates as it relates to this application.
All right, thank you. And I'm just going to go to, first of all, CAO Johnston, does that, and also Planner Spencer, does that cover off what you would require in the motion that provides the direction that, at least at this time, would be seeking in the motion? Over to you, CAO Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Thank you, Councillor Hergert. I'll defer to the planner.
Okay.
It's pretty clear language from my perspective, but perhaps she needs more.
Indeed, clear language, but I just want to double check on that. Planner Spencer, a comment on the language.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The only clarity would be to the entire subdivision for Forest Creek Estates, which is fair and reasonable with direction provided that way. I would like to further note that whether or not council has the will that would like to move forward and have a second notification prior to consideration of the bylaw, I guess that would be the clarity that staff requires at this point in time.
Okay, over to you, thank you, Planner Spencer. Over to you, Councillor Hergert.
Yes, I do appreciate the clarification from our planner, and there was no intention to direct on my own. Obviously,
thank you.
The support of my fellow council members, but that would be appreciated, that there would be a second notice, a notice prior to council considering this at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have the motion before us. Is there a seconder? And I would look for a raised hand in terms of an individual that wishes, individual member of council that wishes to second the motion. Councillor Shea. Okay. Comments on the motion at hand, Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, my first question is, I thought we defeated the motion to bring a bylaw forward. That was one of the first things we voted on. So if that is the case, then it talks about a bylaw in the future, but there will not be a bylaw based on our motion, our vote, I believe.
Planner Spencer, over to you for clarity.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. At this point in time, the bylaw was scheduled to be considered by council tomorrow, but because of the motion, it will be deferred at a future date if the clarity that we're going to receive from our municipal solicitor will be provided in a separate report, and council can determine at that point in time if they wish the bylaw to be brought forward for consideration.
Okay.
May I
Please go ahead.
Further comment to the motion from Councillor Herget. I agree that, I think the communication, we lack somewhere along the line in terms of communication, but I think before we make any decisions regarding subdivision agreements that we should partake with the owner of the subdivision to make sure that it fits with their plan. And I think in this case, if we had done that, we could have maybe resolved the issue without bringing it to this point. So I think that's just something we need to do to keep in mind, I think, is to revisit some of these subdivision agreements before we move forward with planning changes. I think that might solve some issues in the future. Thank you.
Anything further from members of council? We have it duly moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. 7 members of council have voted in favor. That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Hutchinson, if you could take your electronic handoff, that would be appreciated. So we are now going on to item number 5, which is ZA 14.2022, Survey Edges, Part Block C, Town of Durham. Councillor Hutchinson has declared a conflict of interest on this particular item. 5.1, application for zoning amendment, Anderson Doug. 5.2, Planner L. Spencer report ZA 14.2022. The recommendation will be read. I will look for a mover and seconder. We will have a presentation from Planner Spencer, questions from members of council, and a vote on this particular for a motion. Then we'll move on to 5.3, 5.4, 5.5. So the recommendation is that council receives Planner Spencer's report and considers an amending bylaw for a future meeting, and that a non-surface agreement be registered on title at the landowner's expense. Is there a mover for this motion? All right, there is no mover for this motion. Oh, Councillor Hamilton. All right then, is there a seconder for this motion? All right, I see Councillor Shea. At this time, we will have the presentation from Planner Spencer. Please proceed.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The subject lands currently do not have an identified municipal address. The property is legally identified as Survey Edges, Part Block C within the Town of Durham. The property is designated as a primary settlement area within the county official plan and designated as residential with a flood fringe and regulated area overlay under the municipality of West Grey official plan. The subject lands do not currently have frontage on an open and maintained municipal road. Arthur Street does not extend in an open and maintained portion to the subject lands, so essentially at this point in time, the parcel is landlocked. The purpose of this application is to change the zone symbol on the subject lands from R1B residential to R1B with exception 464. Exception 464 will permit development on the lot without open and maintained frontage, the effect of which will permit development on a portion of the lands and require the registration of a non-service agreement on title, which will acknowledge that snow clearance and access to the property is the responsibility of the property owner, including for the purposes of fire and emergency access. In addition, I just would like to remind council that this was previously brought forward as a request to purchase municipal property for that portion of the roadway on Arthur Street on June 7th. At that point in time, the recommendation was that council receive the report and that council does not declare those lands as surplus. Recommendation supported was that council support a zoning bylaw amendment application to permit development on the subject lands, provided a non-service agreement is registered on title. The development is subject to certain conditions, and council directs staff to advise of the zoning process to the interested party, hence the application at hand. In addition, comments were provided from the County of Grey. A second set of amended comments was provided by the county, changing the typo from Albert Street to Arthur Street. In addition, further clarification has been provided from the Public Works Department in the sense that this will be only partially serviced with municipal services in this particular location based on topography. In addition, comments were circulated to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, acknowledging that the application will require a development permit from them at that time, should development proceed in future. Additionally, there were comments received from neighboring property owners who have some concerns related to the application, particularly where snow storage may occur, particularly any items related to drainage that may be affected by the property development, in addition to wondering about cul-de-sacs that they feel were to be installed in future. I believe that the Public Works staff has contacted some of those people directly. And again, those comments have been received and will be part of the record. Happy to clarify anything further as you require. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I just took a quick sip of coffee. Now I'm looking for questions from members of council. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson and then Councillor Hamilton.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Okay, so I'm just looking at the staff report. One of the things that I just wanted to look at or ask a question about, if approved, the applicant strongly is encouraged to consult with the Saugeen Valley Conservation prior to an application for a building permit. So I think my question on this one, and I do have a couple other comments, but my question there is, would it not be, I guess, the proper process for them to have that consultation first before we go any further? They put some revenue in or spend money on things that may not be able to actually proceed because we don't know. And I think in the last meeting that this came forward, we were asking for some comments from the SPCA, and I still haven't seen them. So that's question one. To me, a consultation from the conservation may be beneficial to all parties, including council here. So if I could just get a comment on that, please.
Certainly. Planner Spencer, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So prior to the ability for a building permit to be issued, a development permit is required from the Conservation Authority, which is considered to be applicable law. Consultation is encouraged to occur with Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. I do know that they're very busy, and so we have not received comments from them at this time, but I'm happy to circle back and provide updated comments from the Conservation Authority prior to the consideration of the bylaw for first, second, and third reading.
Anything further, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, and thank you, Planner Spencer. So we move on to policy 1.6.1. It's saying there the lands will have access to full municipal water and sewer, and I do not believe we have sewer in that part of town. And if there's no sewer, what are the complications that could be on that parcel of land? And I only have two other questions, but one at a time, please.
Planner Spencer.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So that clarification was provided by the Public Works Department that the property will only be serviced partially by municipal services. There will be some consideration that the Conservation Authority will need to be involved in, depending on where the location of those appropriate services can be on the property, without requiring further further approvals from them at that point in time. So again, happy to circle back and provide those comments from conservation once they're received and bring the bylaw back for consideration at the direction of council.
Deputy Mayor, I wonder if you can ask your next two questions so the planner can address them.
Yep, thank you, sure can. And thank you, Planner Spencer. The next one that I see here is subject lands do not contain open maintained frontage along baseline. I'm not sure what baseline, where that comes into this. I was down there and I didn't see anything. And it also, in that same paragraph, the existing single detached dwelling unit. And I don't believe there's any building on that property, so I need some clarity on that. So that's number one of my two. And then I will go to one more item. Oh, okay. Consultation, this is from the county, with the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority be required for any works on the subject lands as development permit may be required again. So they keep going back to the SBC as the recommendation for that. So that was one part. And the last comment I had is that we did ask about snow removal down there. And I believe our Director of Infrastructure, we did ask that question. And I'm still a little concerned that before we go ahead, do we have a plan in place of where the snow is going to be removed and how we're going to deal with that? Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Planner Spencer.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So I would defer to provide direction from the Director of Public Infrastructure and Works with respect to what that plan looks like at this point in time. I do know that he is involved in the application and has been having discussions with road staff as well to understand what that might look like if this application is approved. Again, we can circle back and I can bring further comments back to council prior to consideration of the bylaw.
All right. Thank you. Anything further, Deputy Mayor?
Well, just I thought I'd had one other question. Regarding the existing building that was supposed to be on this, that's in this report. Thank you.
So through you, Madam Mayor, my apologies, that is an error in the report. There is no existing dwelling unit on the property at this point in time. A building permit application could not be issued because it does not have open and maintained frontage. And as a result, the bylaw doesn't support development without going through this process of a non-service agreement registered on title.
All right, thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Thank you, Planner Spencer. Can you hear me okay, Mayor Robinson?
Yes, thank you. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure how good my internet is this morning. That's good to know. And thank you, Deputy Mayor, for your questions. Those are some of my questions as well. One of my questions would be, there was mention when we last discussed this property, when we were considering selling the road allowance, which we decided not to do, there was mention of fire hydrant and a hydro pole being in the area of our road allowance. And so could the planner describe how would the road allowance be used for the property owners to access their property? And how would that impact the current infrastructure that's there? The hydro, if I have that correct, the pole and the hydrant. Thank you.
Thank you. Planner Spencer, please.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. The reason the non-service agreement was brought forward in this manner and the ability to not sell the unopened and unmaintained road portion of Arthur Street in that location is a result of those services and the extensive work that would have been required to move those services to service one lot under the recommendation from the Director of Public Infrastructure. It was determined that was not the best course of action and not in the municipality's best interest at this point in time for that very reason. So just to summarize, essentially what this will look like for access to the property will look like a laneway, similar to a residential development. The opening of that roadway is not intended for this to become, a full 20-meter width road moving into the property. It will be a laneway.
Okay.
Councillor Hamilton.
That helps to know that there's space for that. Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Thanks for that answer. I too am interested in receiving the Saugeen Valley's comments before consideration, the Public Works comments. That will be very helpful as well. And how would, and perhaps this is a Public Works question, but how would a property that far from our road that we do service be connected to our water system? Would they be running pipes underneath our municipally owned right of way, or what would that even look like? Thank you.
Planner Spencer, are you able to respond, or I'm wondering if we do have Director of Infrastructure and Public Works on the line as well. But first, over to you, as it is your report.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Essentially, that road allowance will still remain the property of the municipality, and there may be the requirement for those services to be connected within that road allowance portion of the lands, as is, like I said before, landlocked parcels. That would be the most logical reason to be able to connect to those services. Beyond that, I would leave to the direction of the Director of Public Works to determine what that looks like in the ground, but essentially the general theory would be within that road allowance.
And I'm just wondering, do we have any, all right, I have been advised that Director of Infrastructure and Public Works is not on this call for the meeting. So that is the response we have at this time, Councillor Hamilton and members of council. Back to you, Councillor Hamilton. Anything further?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, and thank you, Planner Spencer. Well, perhaps when we ask for more comment from Public Works, if that could be part of the comment, which I expect it would be. So thank you. Just I guess a general comment. It seems I'm having trouble with this one. It seems very unique. The property is quite a distance from the main road, and it's all covered in trees. Like, I'm having a really hard time wrapping my mind around putting a house in that area and connecting it through this municipally owned road that's not maintained. I'm really struggling with that. So I'm looking forward to receiving the comments of the Conservation Authority. And us receiving Planner Spencer's report today isn't council saying, yes, we approve. The reason I moved this motion is to give our planner the opportunity to comment on our own report. That's why I put this motion on the table. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to have this conversation and ask her questions. So I just want to make that clear as well, that this motion is to receive the report. And I also understand that more information will be coming. And perhaps it sounds like the report's been amended since it was posted. So just, if I might just check in with staff, if the motion perhaps should read that council receive Planner Spencer's amended report. Anyway, I'll that's a question for staff if we need to amend the motion that's on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Planner Spencer, can you comment on that?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The comments for the report were actually county comments that were amended. So there was some typos and just some points of clarification. So the county planner issued a report to correct those items, which is the amendment. Okay. This report itself, that my report has not been amended.
Thank you for that clarity. Over to you again, Councillor Hamilton. Anything further?
Actually, I do have one more question. I think it was the county report that spoke of this consideration for this road to be upgraded in partnership with the landowner. Do you have a comment about that, Planner Spencer? Have I understood that correctly as an option? Thank you.
Yes, and thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The county did say that there would appear to be future infill development. The use of this non-service agreement at this point in time doesn't negate the ability for council to go back in future if they choose to open the road and, you know, build the road to a certain standard. That's consideration. That's a broad policy county comment, and I can see their intent. However, for the purposes of what is accomplishing for this the single lot, the expense to be able to move those utilities and to bring the road up to a standard doesn't necessarily make sense for this particular property. And I just want to leave one other point of clarification, that any tree removal on the property will have to go through the county's tree cutting bylaw. So that's something that they would require a permit for going forward as well.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're quite welcome. Any other member of council wishes to have questions in response to Planner Spencer's report that we just heard? I am looking. All right, I'm not seeing none. Any? So the motion moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shea. I'll just read it again because we've had some discussion. And that is that council receives Planner Spencer's report and considers an amending bylaw at a future meeting, and that a non-service agreement be registered on title at the landowner's expense. All those in favor indicate with the raised hand. I am looking, I'm not seeing any other, any member of council raising their hand. All those opposed to the motion indicate with the raised hand. So I see 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed, so all those opposed was 5, and then I just have to indicate all those in favor again. So I only have 5, recognizing we had a conflict of interest. So Councillor Hutchinson is not participating or voting, but there's 6 members of council. So I just want to make sure through audio video here that I'm capturing all the votes. So I just at this point have 5 members of council that are in opposition to the vote. I have 1 member that did not vote. We have 6 members. So I'm just for clarity, members of council, on the motion, all those in favor indicate with a raised hand. All right, all those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 6, there we are. The motion is lost. 6 members of council did not support the vote. And the reason that I called it again was just to have clarity that all members have the opportunity to vote should they choose to do so. So that motion fails, but Deputy CAO, Deputy Clerk, it is the intent that we continue on with the public meeting for the balance of these items so that everybody gets an opportunity to speak on this application. As been duly noticed. So we will continue on. So 5.3 written comments received, 5.3.1 Grey County, and as well as you've indicated, Planner Spencer, could you identify if any other correspondence has been received? Please proceed with this item.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So comments were provided from the County of Grey. As previously noted, they were amended to correct some typographical errors. In addition, there were comments received in the form of a letter from several members of the surrounding public, concerns related to the environment and items with respect to the removal of trees, whether or not a cul-de-sac was planned to be within that location, and concerns related to that. From that point, there has been no additional comments that I have received related to the application at this point in time.
Thank you. And I am just going to double check with our CAO clerk. If you, CAO Deputy Clerk, if you, through your office, have received any other correspondence leading up to this meeting, as we do know that correspondence of any communication can be received either verbal or written with regard to applications, which is why I'm inquiring.
Through you, Mayor Robinson, no, I have not.
Thank you. So now we are going on to 5.4 verbal comments, 5.4.1 council members. Any member of council wish to provide any comments at this time? Seeing none. 5.4.2 public members. So this is the time where our public are able to provide comments. First, over to Corporate Communications Coordinator Sheila Ferguson, if you could just explain the process by which an individual can speak, and then we will move ahead and see who wish to participate at this time.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. It should be noted for this portion of the meeting that public participation must be done through the Zoom meeting software and cannot be done through the live stream on YouTube. For members of the public waiting to participate in this portion of the meeting, you may do so in one of 2 ways. The first being, if you have joined us via phone line, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and that will let us know that you would like to speak. After speaking, or if you raised your hand in error, you can press *9 again to lower your hand. If you've joined us using the Zoom meeting software, you can either send a chat message to myself, Sheila Ferguson, Communications Coordinator, either stating that you would like to speak or that you would like your message read on your behalf for the record. Or you can raise your hand, usually located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen with a blue or yellow hand icon. And at this time, Mayor Robinson, I am seeing one member of the public wishing to speak with their hand raised on camera.
Okay, thank you for that. I just wanted to confirm, Madam CAO, are you able to hear my audio video this time? Okay, thank you. I just wanted that confirmed. So I do see there was an individual that had hand raised. I believe it was Doug. So noted. Actually, Christine, you're muted. Oh.
Can you hear me? I'm having trouble hearing right now. I don't know why.
Pardon me, I am just double checking with my audio. Thank you. Is everybody able to hear me at this time? Members of council?
I hear you now.
All right, thank you. And then staff in chambers? Thank you. Thank you for that. Please go ahead. The individual you're on screen identified as Doug. Could you please list your full name?
I'm Doug Anderson. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead and thank you.
Okay. I am the owner of the property in question. I'm disappointed that you're not receiving this thing. I don't understand why it's complicated. The reason I'd like to explain the reason why I didn't consult with the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority except verbally, and I have spoken to them, and their process is fairly extensive. They intimated to me that they were going to require a couple of studies be done, like slope stabilization study, environmental studies. All this stuff is going to require access to the property. Don't see how I can really move forward without being able to get equipment onto the property to do the kind of testing that's required by the engineers and stuff, which is why I went this route first to try and get access to the property. I think it's sort of a chicken and egg situation. That's you want everything to know what's going to be there, but I can't really make plans until I have experts come in and give me their feedback on where proper, site would be for construction and all that sort of stuff. And as far as disturbing the road allowance, a laneway or a access road will definitely not be nearly as invasive or whatever you want to call it to the neighbors as, clear cutting the whole thing and turn into an actual road. So I think this should be much more acceptable to the neighbors. Then the access for services, there's every road allowance has services buried in the road allowance. So I don't see why there's that this is not exceptional. You're going to put a water line in, it'll go in the road allowance until it gets to the property line. And then it's the homeowner's responsibility to take care of it from there. And it would be the same with the electrical services as well. As far as sewer services, I did speak to Public Works last year, and they told me that they have several situations in town where private people couldn't be hooked up to the sewer because it was too low or whatever. They undertook to set up their own pumping station, and they would pump it to the sewer so that it was on the sewer system. And it was just a homeowner's responsibility. I forget exactly what he called it, similar to this private service agreement for the right of way. So even though it's not on sewer, the intent would be to actually do something like that. And I also understood that at some point in the process, there was talk about making the whole street, give them access by putting a pumping station at the end of the street. I guess that was considered too expensive or something at the time when they put in the sewers, but I don't know whether that would be part of this, whether it could be done as a sort of like the idea of extending the road with a partnership sort of thing. That's a possibility. I don't know. I haven't got that far, but I see no, like, I think most of the issues that you have there are quite surmountable, and it gives me an opportunity to have the kind of private home I would like to have for myself and I have a handicapped child that I have to build a house that's suitable for him. So I need some space. That's part of it.
Thank you for your comments, and they've been so noted by staff. I wonder, Corporate Communications Coordinator, is there any other individual that wishes to speak with regard to 5.2? Public members on zoning ZA 14.22, survey edges, part block C, town of Durham.
Through you, Mayor Robinson, I'm just reviewing my dashboard now, and I'm not seeing any other members of the public wishing to speak.
Okay, thank you. We are now moving on to 5.5, next steps. Over to you, Planner Spencer, for those next steps.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Points of clarification will be provided, at which point in time a bylaw can move forward for council consideration, with those points of clarity provided at a future council meeting. Following the passage and consideration of the bylaw by council, regardless of the decision, there will be a 20-day appeal period.
All right, thank you. We are now moving on to item number 6, closed public meeting. The recommendation that council hereby closes the public meeting at 10:13 a.m. Is there a member for this motion? Deputy Mayor, is there a second for this motion? Councillor Hergert. All those in favor indicate with a raised hand. Six members of council have voted. 7 members of council now have voted in favor of the motion. The motion is carried. We stand adjourned for this public meeting. Have a wonderful afternoon.